That's right. Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers. Tiki here, and welcome to the official reveal of the Elite Eight on So You Want to Be an Imagineer Season 16, Purists versus Innovators. And you guys are going to have to excuse me because this is the first solo show that I have done in quite some time. So I'm a little bit intimidated by that. I don't know. I just kind of I probably could have messaged Pi and been like, "Hey Pi, you down to do Elite Eight with me?" But you know what? I don't want to play favoritism with the podcast selection and everything like that. So we're just going to get right into it, folks. Now, the names you see here, these are all the people that have submitted and turned in projects for So You Want to Be an Imagineer Season 16, hosted on WDW Magic's Imagineering forums. And the top 6 people on this list, points-wise, are going to get guaranteed spots in Elite 8. Now, that leads us into an interesting predicament with the wildcard selections. Am I going to go with someone who maybe doesn't have as many points because they haven't submitted as many projects? Or am I going to go with someone who's just on the bubble of getting into that top 6 position? It's going to be interesting, and honestly, I don't really know what I'm going to do myself because I have my scores for the last project. I have them all ready to go, but I have not done the math. I've not ranked who gets what points. I've not added the points to the Elite 8 to the leaderboard. So it's going to be like I'm literally kind of flying by the seat of my pants on this, but I want to make it kind of a big live reveal for you guys. I am literally 35 hours away from leaving for the airport on my first trip to Disney World right now. So it's just, I'm definitely on an adrenaline high. I wanted to go see a movie tonight. I wanted to go see Annihilation in about an hour, but it's completely sold out at my theater. So I'm glad to see it doing well. You know, I love Ex Machina, and that's the follow-up movie by that director. Anyways, you guys aren't here to talk for me to talk about movies. This is why I like to have a co-host to keep me on track. So what we're going to do here, we have 6 projects, I believe, from Pie on My Cake, Ace Astro, KMB, Disney Man 1, Magic Feather, and Pixie Princess. We're going to go over those. We're going to add their points to the leaderboard. And then from there, we're going to, of course, crown the top 6 people, as well as I'm going to have the distinction of hand-picking 2 people to be my wildcard picks going into the Elite 8. Importantly, I wish Jacob a fasting, speedy recovery. He's been out with the flu for about a week and a half now. I asked him how he was feeling a couple days ago, and I didn't get any response back, so gonna go ahead and assume that's not good. And I'm hoping for Jacob. I'm hoping for the best. I just want to give him as much time off from judging as I can give him. Hopefully, because we're going to be, this is going to be an extra long project this round because I'm going to have to account for me being gone from WDW Magic. Or me being gone. Well, yeah, I'm sorry. This is why I need a co-host. I'm going to have to account for me being gone to WDW, me being on my trip. I'm going to have to account for that. So there's going to be an extra long window of time to get your projects in for the first Elite 8 round. Hopefully that'll give Jacob enough time to recover and he can be back on board once we actually get the ball rolling with judging the 3 tournament brackets that are going to be crowning the winner of the season. So before we get into the actual project, I'll just kind of put the image on here for, I won't talk about Disney Man specifically quite yet. I just want to say there's kind of a dilemma that I've noticed when judging Carousel of Progress. When judging Carousel of Progress projects, that's a hard thing to say. Carousel of Progress projects. When judging, when judging projects based around the Carousel of Progress, I got to be honest with you, it's not your guys' fault at all. It's just kind of the nature of the attraction. The projects tend to run together because there's only so much you can really do with something like the Carousel of Progress. And so that's entirely on me. And I apologize if I don't have as much to say about each individual project. And of course, it's just been like I've just been running around a mile a minute trying to get ready for the trip, last minute packing, everything like that. Honestly, I haven't really been feeling all that great either the past couple days. So that's not good. I want to make sure I'm well rested and, in the best of health for the trip. But I digress. Of course, the Horizons projects, you can do a lot more with Horizons. So every round, I want to make sure that I get as much, kind of as even possibilities with the Purist and the Innovator side of things with the 2 prompts. I want to make sure the 2 prompts are equally as interesting. I feel like this one, as I said, it's not your guys' fault at all. It's me for not kind of realizing that Horizons you can just do a lot more with. So with that in mind, let's get to Disneyland 1. Now, right away, I kind of want to address something which, honestly, is kind of becoming a reality on these sorts of competitions that I just have to adjust to, because in my days hosting on Vision's Fantastic, the idea of someone taking a solo project that they've done in another thread and just copying and pasting it, I got to admit, that wouldn't have flown in the VF days. But having said that, since there's so much going on in terms of the community, since so many threads are active, and I'm really happy about that. I'm happy that, of course, with the VF days, the open brainstorming would kind of come to a standstill when the games were going on. So I'm glad that there's a lot of diversity going on the boards. That being said, I don't want to dissuade this type of thing, but at the same time, I don't want to see it become a habit, because I feel like someone submitting the same project for 2 or 3 different competitions, that can become problematic. So definitely not trying to call out Disneyland 1. It was more kind of just an interesting observation I had of hey, yeah, this is a new shift in the way that we play that I haven't really thought about before. Okay, so with that in mind, with Disneyland 1, I've got to say probably the biggest complaint I have about this project is the way that it's presented. And it's presented all through dialogue. I got to admit, that's a bit of a pet peeve with me. And I've probably said this before, going back 5 years when we first started the channel, when I talked about projects. To me, I always like to see scenes written out and not necessarily, you can have dialogue in there. I just prefer it to be kind of in the novel format as opposed to the script format, where if you're going to do dialogue, describe the scene. Because I've got to admit, it's definitely kind of it takes longer to get through, and it also, you can't really visualize it in your mind's eye quite as much if you're just reading the dialogue. It's literally like the difference between reading a novel and reading a script. You know what I mean? So I would just kind of steer away from that presentation format just in general. But with that in mind, it's definitely not a bad project at all. I actually really like the way it is written. The dialogue itself is very much in tune with the Carousel of Progress. I especially love the 2000s bit, because it's so in tune with the whole oh, the Wright brothers are working on a plane. That'll never happen. Same kind of jokes with the Cubs winning the World Series and the mother being really into Facebook and all that. Good stuff. As far as the actual kind of bulk of the project, I got to admit, like I said, it's just sort of the nature of the Carousel of Progress that there's something, I kind of wish that there was more that was changed about the show beyond just the last couple scenes. But at the same time, the last couple scenes of Carousel of Progress are always kind of the big problem area with that. So while I feel that other people who did Carousel projects maybe went a little bit more above and beyond with the different show scenes and everything like that, this was still good. And this still was a very solid update. It was very much kind of in the purest form. You know what I mean? In terms of, it's a nice vanilla Carousel of Progress. It doesn't really take very many risks. There's definitely going to be some projects that we talk about. One in particular from KMB who kind of made a comeback. But this is not a risky project, but it is a very solid foundation for a project. Like I said, really my main issue, as you guys are going to notice with the scoring, is going to come down to the presentation with the script format. So let's get to my scoring with Disneyland 1. For creativity, I gave him an 8 out of 10 because all the ideas were there. I didn't want to knock him down for recycling the project, but at the same time, I kind of definitely don't do that for the Elite Eight, guys. I want to kind of put that out there right now. Please don't do that for the Elite Eight. You know, when you're going into the Elite Eight, I want those projects to be special, and not that this project from Disneyland 1 is bad by any means. I'm just saying, like, I want these projects to be kind of tailor made for the actual season. Anyways, realism, I gave him a 9 out of 10. I mean, honestly, I think with realism, a lot of these I gave like 8s and 9s. You know, there's not really, with Carousel Progress, it's very hard to mess up the realism with that one. For detail, I gave it an 8 out of 10. Like I said, I would have liked to see more of the actual like descriptions of the scenes, but for what was there, it was good. And for presentation, I had to knock it down to a 7 for, like I said, kind of the difference between reading a script and reading a novel. And that brings Disneyland 1's total score. Let me pull it back up so we can track it on here. Disneyland 1's total score is... It is, just so you guys don't have to wait for me to type, it is, it's 32 out of 40. All right, so we'll add him onto there. Of course, there's 6 people here, so you can get 5 points total for beating 5 people on the leaderboard. You get 1 point for each person you come ahead of on the, you know, in terms of the rankings. That's how this is all going to work and go down. Let's move on to our next project. Pie on my cake. My God, this project, I feel like I don't know if it's a Purist project or an Innovators project, and I kind of love it for that reason. Definitely more emphasis was placed on the Horizons part, but at the same time, I feel like the Horizons part of it really just kind of boiled it down to like, yeah, it's a giant people mover through Epcot that kind of celebrates all the diversity and different themes of Epcot, which essentially was what Horizons was. Horizons was kind of this Avengers style format of like taking all these different ideas, you know, like with Mesa Verde and the land and Sea Base Alpha and the Living Seas, and, you know, mixing them all together into this one experience. So I feel like having a people mover there is a very appropriate way to do it. Sorry. Sorry about that. And this is why I don't like to do shows solo, because if something happens, I just completely go off the rails here. Anyways, god damn. Distractions. Professional podcasting here, Tiki. Professional podcasting. Come on. Oh, God. I'm sorry, that just really threw me off. Just someone just walked into my room and grabbed a shirt and then walked out, and I'm like, can I help you? Anyways. Okay, where to go with this? Of course, the original themes of Sea Base Alpha, Mesa Verde, Bravo Centauri, they're all represented here within the different shops and dining. That's very interesting. Really, by all intents and purposes, this is very much in tune with the original. It's like a slice of, it's kind of like a mix of the original Walt Disney City Epcot and then the Perpetual World's Fair Epcot. So it's kind of an interesting blend of those two things into a really sort of permanent placement within the park, which I feel like we need things like this to stick around. This would be a good way to kind of preserve that feel of old Epcot while Ipcot, if you will, IPcot, you know, with Ratatouille and Guardians and probably Inside Out in the future. You know, it's Epcot as a whole is changing. It's going through an identity shift, and I feel like that's not a bad thing, but at the same time, I feel like we really need to hold on to what made the original Epcot special, at least a part of that. And I definitely think, by all intents and purposes, by and large, most of the World Showcase is going to remain largely untouched for the better, but I digress. So Pie's project, like I said, it's very much a nice idea to relocate the Carousel Progress to Epcot. It fits with the park. It frees up space in the Magic Kingdom. And the people mover concept, while simple, it definitely kind of ties all the themes of Horizons together. So while, again, it's kind of an innovative idea, but done in the purest way of like, yeah, it's just going to be a people mover for the rise. It's just going to be like a big people mover. I mean, there's nothing simpler than that, but I like the ambition behind it as well. So really well done, Pi. Once again, up to his high standards. Pi has really kind of come into his own this season. Okay, so creativity for Pi, I gave him a 9 out of 10. Realism, I gave him an 8 out of 10 just because, knowing the situation with Disneyland's People Mover and that infrastructure nightmare, I had to knock 1 point down, but still very, very plausible because it's not like he's doing a bunch of crazy effects or stuff like that. Detail, I gave a 9 out of 10 to. Presentation, I gave an 8 out of 10 to, and honestly, you know what? I got to admit, I don't really feel right about that. Because he had a really good map, so I'm going to bump that up. Actually, I'm going to bump that up to a 9 out of 10, and that gives him a total score of 35 out of 40, which of course puts him above Disneyman 1. So let's go ahead and add that to the leaderboard here. So Pi is going to be above Disneyman 1 at 35 out of 40. And again, folks, I really wish I had Jacob on as a second judge, but I wish him all the best. I hope he makes a speedy recovery from his flu. It's just, I don't like to adjust my scores just to avoid ties, but at the same time, I'm always paranoid about a tie, and I'm always kind of paranoid that I'm subconsciously adjusting scores to break the ties. So I don't mean to, folks, but with Jacob, it just opens it up. It's like an 80 possible points instead of a 40 possible points. So, all righty, I apologize for that brief setback we had back there. But moving forward, plugging along, let's get to Horizons on the Future by K&B. This is one of the most ballsy projects. I don't want to say in the history of So You Want to Be an Imagineer or anything, because that would be hyperbolic, but definitely of this season, one of the most ballsy, gutsy, risk-taking projects. Now, he apologizes up front for the lack of detail. I think that's very understandable. Or wait, is this? I know someone apologizes for the lack of detail. My bad. I don't mean to get all caught up on it or anything. I know someone apologizes up front for lack of detail. And this isn't necessarily the most detailed thing either, but this very much fits in line with where our society is going, sadly. I mean, it's funny, folks. I just recorded the first podcast in the history of So You Want to Be an Imagineer, the channel, that talked politics, and that was the Black History Month episode of Black Panther, just because inherently that character is very political. We kind of have to get into the political mindset to talk about that character and its history and its legacy. However, I will say in terms of politics, I don't want to get into specifics, but there are things in today's society, I will say, on both sides of the political spectrum, on both sides, I am Switzerland here. On both sides of the political spectrum bother me. And I don't even want to say one more so than the other. It's really, when I say I'm Switzerland, I mean, I just kind of try and stay out of politics. I don't like politics. I think it's just inherently corrupt. And so the reason why I'm going on about this is that K&B kind of hits it on the head. I am I'm in my late 20s. I'm essentially the future of this country. And I'm very pessimistic about where we're going. And I am one of countless others in my age demographic that feel that same way, that feel that same sense of I've got a job. I don't necessarily enjoy the job, but I'm going to hold on to it. And that's about all you can kind of hope for in today's market. I'm sorry, I'm going really dark here, but that's what I like about Horizons on the Future, is that it makes you think. It keeps with that original spirit of Epcot, but updates it. And it's not necessarily a pleasant experience, but it is an innovative experience, which keeps, of course, with the Purists versus Innovators theme of it all. It's a very adult Disney attraction in a good way, and I feel like Epcot is the perfect place for that. So I apologize if my, again, like I've tried to avoid politics, but I feel like Black Panther being the cultural event that it is kind of forces politics onto the channel in some way, shape, or form. But okay, so going into KMB's scores here. So KMB creativity, he gets a 10 out of 10. I mean, just the only 10 out of 10, I believe, that I've given the entire project is for creativity on KMB's end, just because it was just such a gutsy move. For realism, I gave him an 8 out of 10 because really in terms of the concept, there's in terms of the actual show elements, there's not anything that I couldn't picture working, but in terms of the actual concept itself, I don't know if Disney would risk it, so I gave 8 out of 10. Detail, sadly, I would have liked more, so I gave it a 7 out of 10. And presentation, 8 out of 10 because it's a couple good reference photos, but it's not really anything too flashy that sets it over the top. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and give KMB's project a grand total of 33 out of 40, which of course puts him smack dab in the middle between Pi and Disneyman 1. Alrighty, halfway through here. Halfway through, I want to get through these as quickly as possible. So Ace Astra with the Carousel of Progress. Again, I'm sorry, folks. It's just honestly kind of have to skip. Okay, yeah, right. So Ace is the project that goes really forward in time and really kind of ties the Carousel of Project into Horizons in a big way, which is smart because Carousel of Progress is, of course, obviously inherently already tied to the Carousel of Progress. It's the closest thing to a sequel we have in any Disney park, past or present. And I wish it was still around. God, I wish I could experience Horizons instead of Mission Space when I go. I mean, I'll still go on Mission Space. I digress. Anyways, so Carousel of Progress, I have a feeling, random side note, I have a feeling Mission Space is going to be one of those things where it's like, I'm not excited about it at all as I'm sitting here talking about it, but like, as I'm riding into the park on the monorail and I see like the show building with the Mars exterior and everything, I'm going to be like, damn it looks cool. I have to go on it. Anyways, I'm sorry, I randomly had that in my head about Mission Space. I'm like, I'm sure once I see that show building, I'm going to be drawn to it, even though I know it's not a great experience. So I digress. I'm sorry, a little side note, tangent, pre-trip excitement there. So Carousel Project, I don't really have a lot to say about Ace Astro's project. Again, that's less his fault than the fault of like, I should have realized that the Carousel Progress, there's inherently not a lot to say. But I will say that going forward so much in the future is an interesting idea. And I also like the idea of slightly shortening certain scenes in order to make this transition space into the future. That's an interesting concept. That definitely kind of pushes the Carousel of Progress concept further than I think Disneyman 1 did. Whereas Disneyman 1, his project was basically just like, the thing I forgot to mention this about Disneyman 1, the thing I worry about with Disneyman 1s is that I feel like the 2000 scene is already slightly dated, and so it's like it's eventually going to run into the problem that the finale of Carousel of Progress as it currently stands is going to have, right? I digress. So Ace, I'm very sorry. I don't have a ton to say about this. Like I said, it's less your fault and more the fault of just with Carousel of Progress. I didn't realize just how generic some of these things would be. But so in terms of Ace's scores, let's get into it. Okay, so creativity, I give him a 9 out of 10. Realism, I gave him a 9 out of 10. Both very on point there. But for creativity, mostly for that transitioning tunnel, honestly. That was kind of the highlight of the project for me. Detail, 8 out of 10. And presentation, 8 out of 10. So solid marks all the way around. And I just realized with switching up that 1 point on Pies and, giving him that one extra point, I kind of broke one of the ties I had because that brings Ace's total up to 34 out of 40. So far, no tie. I know we're going to have one tie eventually, but Actually, the tie that we have, spoiler alert, is between our last two people, so that kind of gives that away. Okay, so Magic Feather and the Carousel of Progress. Here's the thing. I really like the setup that Magic Feather has here. Like, like the 1920s John animatronic sets fire and the whole thing burns down, and then fans are in an uproar, but Project Phoenix is born. Here's the thing. It's just, there's not really a ton of detail here. I mean, look, it's just kind of a couple paragraphs. There's really not a lot of major differences, to tell you the truth, between the two versions. There's not really a lot of major updates. Having said that, I kind of, in a way, like that, because I feel like if Disney were to redo Carousel of Progress, it would be in this way, where it'd be like, yeah, we'll update a couple things, we'll fix the lighting, but we're not going to go out of our way for it. And I feel like Magic Feather kind of hits it over the head here, so I give her props for that. Like I said, it's just judging by the length of the scene, by the length of the project, there's really not a ton to talk about. So I wish there was more, but I do very much like the setup. I like when people incorporate kind of this bizarro alternate history into their projects. It really pleases me. So with that in mind, let's get to Magic Feather's total. Creativity, I gave her a 9 out of 10. Mostly, like I said, just for the setup alone. Realism, I gave her an 8 out of 10. Really, I probably should have switched creativity and realism. Like, realism probably should have been a 9 out of 10. Creativity probably should have been an 8 out of 10. But, oh well, it comes out to the same anyway, so whatever. Unfortunately, detail, I had to give a 6 out of 10. Presentation, you know what? I had it at a 7 out of 10, but I think I'm going to bump it up to an 8. Just because with an 8 out of 10... she did have an original piece of concept art, so I feel like that's enough to kind of send it a little over the edge, out of just being average. So with that in mind, Magic Feather's total comes to 31 out of 40. Okay, and let's get to the last contender of the evening. Let's get to Pixie Princess, and she has an Innovators prompt. She has the Horizons redo, and this is a very interesting idea. It kind of takes the mission space idea of the two different experiences and blends that into Horizons. Ironically enough, I feel like the mission space, like the fact that you can do two sides, it's like the closest freaking thing that we have to the Horizons experience of, picking the different experiences, which is sad when you think about it, considering that option literally came out of the ride killing people. So, not the best of circumstances to have something like that in place, but I digress, just random observation there. Okay, so yeah, I don't really have a lot to say about it, because honestly, I feel like the project itself, I don't really mean to be harsh about it, but I feel like there's not really a lot there beyond just like, oh, it's cyberpunk, it's steampunk, and one set in space and one set underwater, and that's cool and all. It's just there's not really a lot to go off of, much like Magic Feather. I feel like there's a little bit more detail here than Magic Feather because it's two different ride experiences. But much like Magic Feather, I really would have liked to see a little bit more out of this. Like I said, it's really just kind of like, yeah, it's undersea, but it's steampunk. Yeah, it's in space, but it's steampunk. Like, I don't mean to be harsh. It's just I feel like a little bit more could have been done thematically with that whole idea. Take the steampunk and really emphasize it, really use that as the jumping off point, a foundation for something bigger. So with that in mind, Pixie, her scores really aren't bad at all. So we have creativity and realism, I both gave 8 out of 10 to, and detail and presentation, I both gave 7 out of 10 to. So solid marks all the way around, and that adds up to a grand total for Pixie Princess of 7 out of, what am I talking about? 30 out of 40. Okay, so folks, it is time to reveal the Elite 8. Are you ready? I don't know if you're ready or not. Let's see how many people are watching right now. We only have one person watching right now. That's slightly disappointing. Oh, well. So let's reveal the Elite Eight. Of course, Pi, he beats 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pi has beat 5 people, which brings his grand total up to 35 points, which officially passes Space Mountain in the rankings. Now, Space, I want to apologize. I wish I had time to talk about your concepts. It's just, frankly, I didn't have time to read them, and I totally would have if you would have said, like, hey, count these for points. But since you specifically told me not to count them for points, you know, maybe I'll read them on the plane, you know, as some reading material if I need that. But I don't mean to discount your ideas. It's just, like I said, I kind of had to budget my time out a little bit today. Anyways. Okay, Ace. Ace gets 4 points, and that brings his grand total tied with D. Hindley up to 27 points. We'll see how that shakes out. KMB. KMB gets 3 points. KMB hasn't submitted in a couple projects, so I'm kind of curious to see how that's going to affect his ranking here. So that brings his grand total through 8 projects out to 20 points. And Magic Feather, she is going to get 2 points. Brings her grand total up to 17 points. Passes Disneyman 1 by 1 point. And finally, Pixie Princess, give her 1 point. Okay, here we go, folks. Here we go. Some tough decisions are going to have to be made. Some cuts are going to have to happen here. Oh boy. So the first official 6 people in the Elite Eight are Pie on My Cake, Space Mountain, D. Hindley, Ace Astro, Disney Dad, and KMB 777. My God. Good, strong list of people here. All have very much contributed. It's interesting that Disney Dad and KMB definitely got in, even though they didn't submit every round. They took time off, but their projects were strong enough that they got a solid lead over the rest of the pack. And I'm glad that we kind of have a few points difference between the top 6 and the rest of the pack. Now it's time for the wild cards, and this is where my job gets really freaking difficult, because honestly, I think 3 people deserve to make it here, and only 2 people can. Not to discount T-Cool, Jokers, or Invader Sam, it's just they've kind of fallen off. We haven't really heard from them in a few rounds. Oh boy. I think I'm going to make the easy choice before I make the hard choice, and I'm going to put Pixie Princess in the Elite Eight. The reason I say that is because even though Pixie is a new player, she came along, and I feel like she's been really standing out, and her passion is in it, and I feel like she deserves a spot. And I feel like the reason why she doesn't rank as high isn't to do with her skill level as much as her experience level. So she's definitely an underdog going into the Elite Eight, but I really feel like she deserves a spot here for coming in a little more than midway through the project roster selection and really making a standout showing. Which makes my job really tough right now, because I feel like Magic Feather and Disneyman 1 both deserve this. Oh, God. Guys, I think ultimately at the end of the day, I think I'm going to have to go. Oh, this is tough. I mean, honestly, I really think there's pros and cons with both these players. I feel like Magic Feather has submitted more consistently. At the same time, I feel like Disneyman, when he does submit, he ranks higher. But with Disney Man, there is that factor that he kind of submitted a recycled project this round. At the end of the day, though, I feel like what Disney Man has given us in the past, the fact that he has ranked higher in certain rounds, the fact that Magic Feather, although she does give it her all and she has tried, she hasn't really cracked above, above the bottom of the pack in the rounds that she's submitted. And again, I feel like Magic Feather and Pixie Princess are very similar. In a way, I wish I could pick both Magic Feather and Pixie Princess. However, I feel like Disney Man 1 deserves the spot. Oh, God. Oh, guys, this is a tough call right here. This is a really... That's my ultimate decision because, like I said, I just feel like Disney Man 1, it's kind of a quality over quantity thing. Not to say that Magic Feather's projects didn't contain quality. I just feel like Disney Man 1 has gotten up in the rankings a little bit more than Magic Feather has. Man. And Magic Feather, I want to stress, like, by all means, you are the 9th place finisher. Like, you came this close to making it. Oh, man. I mean, really, I wish we could have done sort of like, I don't know, super duper 9. I can't think of an in word that goes well with 9. That's like, like the nice 9. I don't know, anyways. But yeah, that's where my decision ultimately lies. I don't know. I got to admit, I'm still not entirely comfortable with this because, like I said, there is that factor that Disney Man 1, he didn't really work for this last spot. I mean, his projects have been more consistent overall, but at the same time, he just literally copy and pasted something when he hasn't even submitted in a couple rounds. So I'm still not entirely sure, but I've made my pick and I kind of have to go with that one way or another. So with that in mind, Magic Feather finishes in 9th place. T Cool finishes in 10th place. Jokers finishes in 11th place. And Invader Sam finishes in 12th place in the official standings. And that brings us to the one-on-one matchups, folks. So we are going to go ahead and do this tournament bracket style. We're going to take the top and the bottom person and kind of face them up against each other until we get into the middle. So the first round, or not the first round, I should say, because this is all going to be taking place in the same round. But the first matchup is going to be Pi versus Disney Man 1. The second wildcard pick versus the second place finisher. Second matchup is going to be Space versus Pixie Princess. This is definitely the biggest, the biggest underdog fight yet. Pixie's going to have her work cut out for her, or Space is going to have to drop the ball one way or another. This is definitely kind of the most lopsided of these, but hey, that's how the tournament bracket style kind of works out sometimes. So, just kind of have to go with it. And then we're going to have D. Hindley versus KMB. And then definitely kind of, as always, the last match in any tournament bracket is the most interesting because it's the most evenly paced and paired out. We're going to have Ace Astro versus Disney Dad, two of the strongest competitors of the season going at it head to head. Like I said, with Pi and Disney Man 1 favoring Pi in that fight, but Disney Man 1 has the capacity to really come out swinging and surprise us. That's why I specifically picked him as a wild card. Obviously, Space versus Pixie Princess, that's one where, I don't want to discount Pixie Princess in that fight at all, but as I said, it's either Space is going to have to drop the ball on it, or Disney Princess or Pixie Princess is really going to have to come out swinging with the likes of which we haven't seen from her yet. Or both are going to have to happen in that regard. But she's an underdog, and we love an underdog story. And then D. Hindley versus KMB and Ace Astro versus Disney Dad are both pretty evenly matched fights. The one caveat I will say is that KMV has been less consistent with his posting than D. Hindley has. But then again, D. Hindley did submit this past round, so who knows? Ace Astro versus Disney Dad is definitely the most evenly matched of these four, and I think that's going to be the one where either one of them making it into the top four, that's going to be a fight. That's going to be a fight either way. Okay, folks, so I am going to go ahead. I'm so sorry, but I really don't have time or energy to write out written reviews this round. You're going to have to cut me some slack on this because of the Disney trip and because I'm not feeling great and I want to conserve my energy. But what I will do is I will make a formal announcement, a formal post on the board, which will have my scores for the past project, for Project 8, along with the official, the leaderboard, along with, you know, who's in the Elite Eight, who's matched up against each other. And I guess right now I can reveal the prompt for the first of 3 Elite Eight projects. Of course, once we get down from 8, we'll go down to 4, you know, 2 head-on-head matches. The winners of those 2 matches will face off against each other to see who wins the whole dang season. So Project 9 is going to be called That's Entertainment. And this project is going to be very much focused. It's kind of going to be a spiritual successor to the project we had a couple rounds ago called the Simple Things. One of the things I love the most about Disney and what makes Disney special is its live entertainment, and specifically how that live entertainment can really be special with the certain cast members. Now, you guys might not be familiar with Rod Miller because Rod Miller is very much a Disneyland original and not a Disney World original. But I will say, staying at Port Orleans Riverside, probably the thing that I am most looking forward to about staying at that resort is getting the honor to see Yeehaw Bob, and probably going to see at least 2 or 3 of his shows while I'm there. I'm really going to take advantage of that. Yeehaw Bob, for those who don't know, he's apparently like a really, really lively honky-tonk ragtime piano player. He gets really into it. It's at the River Roast at Port Orleans Riverside. Definitely plan on taking advantage of that. I feel like that is like, I'm going to be right there. We're going to have at least a couple days where we're not in the park, so we're not in as much of a rush, you know. That's going to be great. So in honor of Yeehaw Bob, we're going to have That's Entertainment. Purists, your goal is to create a show, a one-man show for either a Disney park or a Disney resort that is simply one man and a musical instrument of your choice. And you're going to have to design a whole show around that. How is he going to interact with the people? What's his theme? What music? Or I'm sorry, I shouldn't. What's his or her theme going to be? You know, we're in the 21st century here, you know, anyways, I'm just so used to Rod Miller, Yeehaw Bob, you know, those are, anyways. Of course, I'm sure there's many excellent female Disney musicians as well out there. So you get the point, though. Basically, it's a one-man band, so you have to create a one-man act that just puts on a show just using a single musical instrument. That'll be tough. That'll be tough. But you know what's also going to be tough? Theming an entire resort specifically around a musical act. This is interesting. This is, I just had this idea kind of pop into my head. I'm really not sure how well people are going to take to this. So essentially the idea is to create a mascot for your Disney resort, to create a new Disney resort and have the live entertainment really play a part, really play a pivotal role in the theme and the identity of your resort. That's what I'm looking for. I'm specifically looking for this entertainment act to really, I want to see him involved in the, in the actual theme of the resort. I want to see them in, again, it's creating a resort out of a personality. It's kind of having an ambassador, having a mascot for a Disney resort, if you will, that you can then actually go and see a show of, and go and it's actual live entertainment. I'm really interested to see what you guys can come up with. I'm a little bit worried about, about if that's going to be a little bit too elaborate, a little bit too broad of a concept, but we'll see. We'll see. So, folks, I'm going to give myself about an hour or an hour and a half to eat dinner, kind of maybe take a shower if, I'm not feeling great, to tell you the truth. But I will have my scores, the Elite Eight, everything like that, the tournament bracket, like you see. And importantly, I'll have the prompt. I'll have the Project 9 prompt written out, so, you can, actually review the details of what I'm asking for you from these two prompts. I will do that shortly. But in the meantime, a big congrats to the 8 people who made it into the semifinals this season. Pie on My Cake, Space Mountain, D. Hindley, Ace Astro, Disney Dad 3000, KMB, Pixie Princess, and Disneyman 1, and we bid adieu to Magic Feather, T Cool, and Joker's Wild, and Invader Sam. Thank you for joining us this season. You guys are all awesome. I feel like this season has been it's an unconventional season of So You Want to Be an Imagineer, but I feel like what I was going for with the project, kind of with the season, taking it back to its roots, taking it back to, kind of the old, season 1 through 4 days, but perfecting that format. I feel like it's great. And honestly, I couldn't be happier with the fact that 12 people overall played, because that very much soothes my OCD of that's a nice round number of people to put into the standings. It's so clean and even. I don't know. I'm weird. I really attach to stuff like that really doesn't matter in the long run. But yeah, guys, let's see. As I've been talking, in about 15 minutes, I'll have 34 hours to go before I leave for the airport on my Disney trip. So yeah, adrenaline and everything else kind of coursing through my veins right now, but kind of got to keep a level head about it. Thanks so much for playing, everyone, and keep moving forward.